So I didn't understand that you had only really come across this problem after the plagiarism scandal broke with Christopher Rufo. Okay, so that's part of the reason why it's received less attention than it might have. Even, see, I'm still wrestling with this because you say, you said a bunch of things that are very provocative in the last tranche of your statements. You said you didn't fit the progressive narrative. Now, it's a weird thing. I kind of see this with Ayaan Hirsi Ali as well. I read Ayaan Hirsi Ali's book, Infidel. Oh, it must be 15 years ago. And I thought, oh my God, this woman, she's just unbelievable. She's so tough. She's so forthright. She comes from this backwards African place under, fighting against extreme odds. She makes it to the Netherlands. She makes something of herself. She's stunningly articulate. She's brave beyond belief. Like, you would presume that the feminists and the progressives would be hoisting her up on their shoulders as a triumphant example of what a woman can achieve, on the basis of her character and the nobility of her intellect. And yet she's regarded with enmity among the so-called progressives. Now, and you're telling a story that's very similar. And then you added something to it that's even stranger, and really difficult to wrap your head around. So you said it's been your experience in academia that the white progressives in particular, who didn't like you, were very much inclined to pick the angry blacks, let's say, angry, resentful blacks with an axe to grind, with lesser academic credentials. Okay, so now you got to think about, well, why the hell is that? Is that you could imagine an element of racism, which would be, if you're going to have black people around, you want to make sure that you have the great advantage of being able to look down on them, at least for some reason. If they're at least of the right class, then you don't have to put up with their annoying working class idiosyncrasies. And then, but that's so nefarious, it's so nefarious. It's a kind of racism it's much worse than the racism of low expectations, right? It's actually, what is it exactly? Is that
it is just pure old-fashioned racism. I believe that the progressives in academia, they believe that racial and ethnic minorities are inferior. I'm sure you have heard or you're familiar with the fact that there are progressives who have labeled Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery as a fiction, a work of fiction. And so the progressives, they have to maintain this thing of all minorities being victims and black people and people of color not being able to do anything for themselves. And when they run across those of us who defy that narrative, there's no place for us. And in my experiences, they have always rewarded those that fit the stereotype.
Or who are willing to exploit it. Okay, so I think you put your finger on the core issue here. So most of the pathology on the campuses and in the broader political sphere that I see now, I attribute to the forceful imposition of a victim-victimizer narrative. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's a postmodern derivative of Marxism, essentially, although the pedigree of such ideas goes way back before Marx, into the French Revolution, way back before then, into the biblical story of Cain and Abel, right? The resentful Cain who always construes himself as a victim, who wants to pull down his ideal, who wants to shake his fist at God. It's a very old story. Okay, so your hypothesis essentially is that because you didn't play the role of victim, didn't regard yourself as a victim, and did take advantage in the positive way of the benefits that the system offered you, including the mentorship of primarily conservative people, and that you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, although you said, you had people who were encouraging you and helping you, that you're exactly the sort of person that indicates that the victim-victimizer narrative is wrong.